Good evening, everybody, and thank you for coming to this, the 13th evening lecture in the Historic Ridgeway Project series, sponsored by the North Wessex Downs National Landscape. This evening, we are very lucky to have with us Dave Kavanagh from the Friends of the Ridgeway to talk about the work of the group. You'll have noticed your microphones and cameras are switched off to prevent any accidental interruption, but you're certainly invited to ask questions after the talk using the chat function. The Friends of the Ridgeway are also great friends of our project and have generously shared advice, grant funding and support to us, for which we are extremely grateful. Dave himself has also chopped vegetation to reveal lost monuments, helped construct dead hedges and all sorts of things, really culminating in kindly giving this talk. So thank you, Dave. And without further ado, and if you're okay to do so, do please continue.
Right, thank you, Dan, and thank you on behalf of the Friends of the Ridgeway for giving me the opportunity to say what we've been doing for about 50 odd years and what we're doing at the moment and looking forward to in the future. Just let's remind ourselves where the Ridgeway National Trail is, heading southwest to northeast if you're that way inclined, or northeast to southwest if other way. So from near Marlborough and Avebury up through the North Wessex Downs, along the Goring Gap in tune with the Thames Path National Trail, and then striking off on its own on the chalk ridges up into Buckinghamshire. Right, so the Ridgeway National Trail was officially opened in 1973, and in that same year, a Wiltshire archaeologist created the organisation called the Ridgeway Conservation Conference, and their objective was to preserve and enhance the Ridgeway and to campaign against physical damage and the intrusion of motor traffic and motorsports. Some 9 years later, at a meeting of the Ridgeway Conservation Conference, that organisation morphed into what we have today, the Friends of the Ridgeway, and I'll explain a bit more why that is, why that was in a moment. So we started with trying to get recreational vehicles prohibited from the whole length of the Ridgeway in 2006. This was achieved, but only really for Oxfordshire and a little bit in West Berkshire, and I'll explain why that only happened in Oxfordshire. So we still have the objective of complete prohibition of recreational vehicles on the Ridgeway National Trail. In addition to that, then moving on in time, I'll explain about the Ridgeway Partnership, which manages the Ridgeway, and the role that Friends of the Ridgeway, what role they had in forming the partnership and what we do today with the partnership. Another of our objectives that started in the middle about 2010 was, or a bit before that actually, championing the Great Chalk Way, which are the whole length of the chalk ridges from the Norfolk coast down to the Dorset coast. And we also promote the Ridgeway in a number of ways with the Swire Ridgeway Arts Prize on our Facebook site and on our website. So I'll be coming to those things in the second half of the talk. Right, I am the proud possessor of umpteen volumes of press cuttings. There was a time, which I don't think is now, when lots of people bought lots of local newspapers and national newspapers, not on a screen, but in pieces of paper. And the secretaries of the Friends at the time and other members cut out and kept lots and lots of press releases to do with the Friends activities in the particularly in the 90s and into the noughties. So why did the Friends of the Ridgeway campaign to have non-essential, I'll sometimes refer to them as recreational motor vehicles prohibited from the Ridgeway? And the next 4 photographs I'm going to show you are taken from our archives, photographs taken by members of the Friends. So here we have in 1998 on the Ridgeway above East Ilsley, this morass. It doesn't look like this today, but you can see how wide it is because vehicles have gone wider and wider, and then walkers and cyclists and that are pushed further and further to try and avoid the quagmire. Here we have 1999 near Wayland Smithy. Again, the Ridgeway isn't that wide today because it no longer gets gouged out by these vehicles today, and the surface now is much better. And I'll explain why it's much better now than it was then. But you can see what the problem was. Here we have just on the east side of the A34, so we've just entered West Berkshire now. Again, how wide the damage is, how nasty it is. And finally, this is not the only FoR photographs that we've got, but the FoR that I've decided to show you. This is at the car park just leading to Scutcham Knob, an ancient monument, which is about 20 metres down the track on the left. But again, just look what an awful mess it is. So it was these things that had happened and continued to happen to the Ridgeway, making it a real mess, as well as the presence of motor vehicles on the Ridgeway when walkers, cyclists and so on were on there, and when they were on there making a noise as well. These are the things that stimulated the formation of the Ridgeway Conservation Conference and continued into the Friends of the Ridgeway. So here's motorcyclists. Again, this is just into West Berkshire, and 4x4s. I mean, that width of damage is truly amazing, truly awful. To give you an idea of some of the scale of the problem, in October 1983, a garage in Surrey, which shall be nameless, it organised a convoy of 10 Mercedes cross-country vehicles, i.e. 4x4s, which drove along the Ridgeway from Streatley to Avebury. And in the publicity for this drive, it said, "Ridgeway Revisited, a trip for conservation by," and the name of the garage. So I think conservation would be the last word I would apply to 10 4x4s going across the Ridgeway. During the 90s, there was a marked increase in the number of people buying 4x4s for use and for use on metal roads. Here we have a delightful picture of a car that's been left behind, again, near where the Ridgeway goes under the A34. Here's somebody taking the dog for a walk, but instead of the human being walking with the dog, they are in that car trundling along. I mean, I do know of people who tell me that their sons and daughters used to go up onto the Ridgeway around this time in normal cars. I mean, it's just unbelievable that this would happen. And we're not just talking about damage to the Ridgeway, we're talking about the breaking of the peace and quiet of the Ridgeway and reducing the safety of the Ridgeway. Here you can see this is a perfectly good section of the Ridgeway here, but it's not that wide, and you don't really want motorcyclists zooming past you while you're walking or with your horse or your cycle. This is I still can't believe this photograph. This is a road sign, but it's actually on the Ridgeway, just as though the Ridgeway was like an A road or a B road or a C road, telling you the distances to various notable places along the route. And this, at this time, in the 80s, was all done quite legally. Now, the Ridgeway at this time was classed as a road used as a public path, or a RUP, in Oxfordshire and bits of West Berkshire and Wiltshire. Now, this was to turn out to be a blessing in disguise, so I'll come back to it later. But remember, road used as a public path is a designation of some byways. So it was Dennis Grant, an archaeologist, who formed the Ridgeway Conservation Conference. And as I said earlier, it's to largely to protect against physical damage because of the intrusion of motor traffic and motorsports. I should say, in case there's any doubt, we're not trying to stop landowners using the Ridgeway. We're not trying to stop. In some places, the Ridgeway goes past some people's houses. They're allowed to use the houses, of course. Emergency services, delivery people, they can use it. It's sports vehicles which are unnecessary and which can cause the greatest damage. So Dennis attended a number of meetings in the House of Commons because he wanted to influence the Wildlife and Countryside Bill of 1981 to give protection to ancient unmetalled highways, but he was not successful. So 9 years later, there was a special meeting of the Conservation Group in Lanesbarn again, in Wantage, in 1982, and it was decided that a new organisational structure and direction of policy was required. So people effectively went into the meeting as members of the Ridgeway Conservation Conference and came out as the Friends of the Ridgeway. And a constitution was agreed the following March, which was the first full meeting of the Friends. So prominent amongst those early members of the Friends was Nigel Ford, who was the secretary for some 15 years, Lord Bancroft, a previous head of the civil service, no less, Maurice Mendoza, who was then recently retired as director of ancient monuments, so people who knew what they were talking about really did, and Joan Pye, a former colleague of Nigel Ford. As you might expect, the Ramblers, Council for Protection of Rural England, i.e. CPRE and YHA, were in favour of prohibiting vehicles from the Ridgeway. And keynote speakers at that opening meeting were Lord Melchett, who was president of the Ramblers at the time, and Chris Hall, who was then the editor of The Countryman, a former director of CPRE, and subsequently chair of Oxfordshire Ramblers, and is currently very active in the Open Spaces Society. So some big guns. 150 or so people attended this meeting, which that's a lot to me, and it shows the extent of the damage and destruction going on the Ridgeway and the passion to try and do something about it. On the right there, Lord Bancroft, he wrote a letter to the Times about it. This headline here, Friends of the Ridgeway to look after the interests of walkers. I just want to make it quite clear, we're not only interested in the interests of walkers, but with anybody who's going along the Ridgeway more or less under their own steam. So, for example, cyclists, horse riders, mobility scooters. These are sometimes referred to as trampers. Not the people, they're not tramps, but the vehicles that they use are referred to as trampers. People in carriages, horse carriages, runners, of course, and hikers, and people who are just ambling along. We want the Ridgeway to be a safe and pleasant place for all these people. But despite all the big hitters in the Friends, no substantial progress was made until the early years of the millennium. In other words, there was a campaign going on about 30 years before success came on. Now, the Countryside Commission proposed a traffic regulation order. That means basically an order to stop doing something that would prohibit non-essential vehicles on the Ridgeway, though only on summer, Sundays and bank holidays. Berkshire County Council proposed to prohibit all motor vehicles from the Ridgeway, except for access all year round. There were some 130 letters of objection from motorcycle clubs. On the other side of the argument, the CPRE, YHA, National Trust Ramblers thought the time had come for this prohibition. But then Berkshire Council decided not to prohibit non-essential vehicles only on summer, Sundays and bank holidays. They would have liked an all-year ban. Having said that, they raised doubts as to whether the police could enforce such a total ban. And I'll come back to that argument later. Then the Countryside Commission modified what they were proposing a bit to include all Sundays and bank holidays, but still only those days in the year. So the government said, well, we'll spend some money to have a look at this. And so they spent 50,000 quid on a survey. The Vale of White Horse, through which a lot of the Ridgeway runs here in Oxfordshire, the Vale of White Horse councils backed the Countryside's proposal to ban non-essential vehicles on Sundays and bank holidays, but Wiltshire Council, Berkshire and Oxfordshire county councils were sympathetic, but nevertheless against the proposal on the grounds that it would be unenforceable. And again, I'll come back to that point. So the government established a working party to see how best protect the byways, not just the Ridgeway, but byways in general from non-essential vehicles, and in the end decided not to rule out a ban on the Ridgeway or anywhere else. And the Minister for Roads and Traffic said that the arguments put forward at the inquiry to support a ban were not strong enough to justify any restrictions. So notwithstanding those photographs that you see there and the other ones that I showed you and many more besides, what do you have to do to have the Ridgeway protected? There was debates in Parliament, so here we've got an extract from Hansard, where Andrew Hunter MP speaking up for protecting the Ridgeway by closing it down to recreational vehicles. That's the House of Commons in 1995. And in the same year, Lord Bancroft and Lord Kennet were speaking to this topic in the Lords. Right, at last, I have to remember 30 years of getting nowhere. But good news is on its way. Here we have Ian Ritchie, who said he became chair of the Friends of the Ridgeway in 2020. One day we were out on the Ridgeway on a particularly damaged section, we meaning him and his wife, with deep ruts and pools of mud and water caused by 4x4 off-road vehicles. My language got worse and worse until Susan turned to me and said, if it upsets you so much, why not do something about it? So he did. And he became chair to start with. And he made two wonderful recruitments. One was Chris Brasher, former Olympic champion, and as president of the Friends, and Chris Bonington, our great mountaineer, as patron. And Ian said, Chris Brasher proved to be an inspired choice. He worked hard for us, got us lots of press, radio and TV coverage, as well as being a good guy. Just a little aside, when I was doing some research on Chris Brasher, in 1954, he was the pacemaker for the team that first ran a sub 4-minute mile. But he wasn't only a miler. At the Melbourne Olympics in 1956, he won the gold medal in the 3,000-meter steeplechase. So he was a tough guy, but was disqualified for interfering with another runner. But then a day later, he was reinstated. Unfortunately, he had been celebrating for several hours before the medal ceremony, which had been delayed. He subsequently said that he was the only Olympic champion to be totally and absolutely slaughtered when he received his medal. So in one way or another, Chris Brasher was quite a guy, and he worked very hard and very successfully for the Friends and our quest. Now, looking at the top left there, the Land Access and Recreation Association did, let's give them credit, put up notices asking 4x4 users and motorcyclists not to use certain sections of the Ridgeway during the winter months because of the damage caused. So that was good, but unfortunately, as you might expect, there were some of the riders and drivers who didn't respect this. Robert Jackson MP for Wantage at the time said, I think there's a belief that if you say the voluntary code is working, it will work. But you only have to go up onto the Ridgeway to see that it isn't. It's a mess. And Chris Brasher repeated the demand for tougher codes that would ban non-essential traffic from destroying this national trail. Living close to the Ridgeway and near Wantage, a national hunt trainer said that the Ridgeway was in a dangerous position as a result of damage caused by off-road vehicles. He said that some of the ruts were up to 4 foot deep. They posed a hazard to horses and their riders, as well as to pedestrians. So I put this in to show that it's not just the usual suspects like the Friends complaining about the situation up there, but by other people who had cause to be on the Ridgeway. In the House of Commons, again, 2002, Robert Jackson led a debate. And in the Lords, Lord Bill Bradshaw was very active on the subject of recreational motor vehicles, campaigning and moving and among his fellow Lords to get them on side. And he succeeded Chris Brasher then as president of the Friends. And as a result of this activity, by the Friends and in the Lords and in the Commons, and Ian Ritchie, he went up to both those places to lobby personally. Members began to rise, as did our funds, and we started to be noticed. We established productive working relationship with the local highway authorities along the trail and with the National Trails Office, where Jocelyn became a good friend of ours. So Joss was the Ridgeway officer of the day. And with the result, so these are the words of Ian. In 2003, Wiltshire Council introduced an all-year-round ban on recreational vehicles on Smith's Ridge in Wiltshire. This was the first mention by a highway authority that action was needed to protect the surface of the trail and gave notice what was to follow. So here we have one of my photographs of Smith's Ridge, and you can see it would be a surface that would very, very easily damaged, but it's beautiful these days. And that was also, this section of the Ridgeway in Wiltshire was a road used as a public path. And Wiltshire Council had the power itself to apply a permanent traffic regulation order on it. In other words, recreational vehicles were forbidden to go along it. Unfortunately, most of the other sections of the Ridgeway in Wiltshire and West Berkshire had already been recategorised as boats, namely byways open to all traffic, and this made it much more difficult to close them to recreational vehicles. But there was a further success in 2004 with the interaction that Ian and his friends, the Friends, had been with highway authorities, including with help from the National Trail Team. So these are his words. We were able to persuade the authorities in Wiltshire, Oxfordshire and Berkshire to place a ban for 7 months each year, beginning of October to the end of April, in other words, the wettest months, on the use of the trail by motor vehicles. So that did give a large measure of protection to the surface at the time when damage would have been greatest. But in addition, more success was a couple of years away. Oh, I should comment that this movement moved by Land Access and Recreation Association to persuade riders and drivers not to use the Ridgeway in winter conditions was disobeyed by some of them. So the Friends of the Ridgeway withdrew its support for the, quote, voluntary and totally ineffective Ridgeway Code of Conduct. And that in itself got media coverage and more supporters. As well as working for the Friends, Ian Ritchie worked with GLEAM, which is the Green Lanes Environmental Action Movement, in the push towards recreational vehicles being banned from all unsurfaced roads. Now, at the time when the Natural Environment and Rural Communities Act 2006 was being drawn up, the Green Lanes Protection Group, which was an offshoot from GLEAM, and it's now disbanded, the Green Lanes Protection Group is disbanded, was established to lobby parliamentarians very successfully. I should say the group comprised many organisations throughout the country, each arguing because they had byways that were being ruined by vehicles. So behind this were the Country Landowners Association, GLEAM, Ramblers and Friends of the Ridgeway and others. And the culmination of all these years of lobbying by Friends of the Ridgeway and others was rewarded in the Natural Environment and Rural Communities Act 2006. So all roads used as public paths, including parts of the Ridgeway, which was all in Oxfordshire and a bit in West Berkshire and Wiltshire, were reclassified as restricted byways. So if you like, in one fell swoop, recreational vehicles could no longer legally go along the Ridgeway in Oxfordshire and a contiguous section in West Berkshire at any time. So this indeed was wonderful news for those of us who live in Oxfordshire. Now, in my 30-odd years of walking along the Ridgeway, I would say that the 4x4 and drivers and motorcyclists have indeed honoured the restricted byway status of the Ridgeway in Oxfordshire, and I commend them for that. The continually put argument that prohibiting non-essential vehicles on the Ridgeway would not work because it was unenforceable was wrong. So this is not an argument against prohibiting recreational vehicles from the rest of the Ridgeway in Wiltshire and West Berkshire all year round. Going forward, Friends of the Ridgeway continues to support GLEAM in its objective to have all green lanes, another name for restricted byways, protected from non-essential vehicles. They've got another picture here. This really awful mess, really deep ruts caused there, and they've got a whole library of pictures like this from all over the country. 3 years ago, they published an excellent booklet called Calling Time on Off-Roading and gave copies to MPs and others. And GLEAM is currently working on a revised version for use for parliamentarians in the next few years if the opportunity arises. If you'd like to see and follow their arguments, and it's very well written, very readable, you can download copies of it as a PDF from the GLEAM website. It's only 10 quid a year to join GLEAM, so if you are supportive of their objectives, not just for the Ridgeway, but for the whole of England and Wales, then your membership would be very helpful. Moving on then, and again involving Ian very much, until about 2015 or so, Natural England had part financed the national trails. In fact, they provided most of the money, and they decided that the management and promotion of the trails should pass from them to new partnerships, which would be include representatives of all with an interest in the trails, all members of the public, in other words, who had an interest in the trails, and the highway authorities through which the trails ran. And friends of the Ridgeway chair, Ian Ritchie, and our secretary, Jeff Goddard, took on the challenge of forging a partnership for the Ridgeway and became its first chair and secretary, respectively, in 2015. As well as the board of the partnership, we have two delivery groups. We have two subgroups. One is the delivery group to improve access to the Ridgeway, for example, surface condition, and the development group to promote the usage of the Ridgeway and the Ridgeway corridor. The Ridgeway corridor is in effect that land on each side of the Ridgeway ending at about where there are habitations. These could be villages, they could be towns in places, and it includes obviously all the landowners in the area, farmers in other words, people who run pubs, cafes, rural activities, B&Bs and so forth, because we want the Ridgeway corridor to be good for everybody, because if these businesses thrive, then the people who need those businesses will thrive. And we don't want anything that happens for the Ridgeway to be in any way detrimental for farmers. They have the perfect right to use the Ridgeway if they're required to. So the partnership adopted 5 themes, very much as I understand it, pushed by Ian at the beginning as the Ridgeway partnership was being formed. So the natural Ridgeway, so that's nature, plants, birds, creepy crawlers and things. The living Ridgeway, which would include farmers, other businesses in the countryside on either side of the Ridgeway. The ancient Ridgeway, of course, the ancient monuments of which we are so blessed along the Ridgeway. The sporting Ridgeway, those using it for long distance cycling and running and what have you, and the creative and spiritual side of the Ridgeway. Sarah Wright there, top right, she became the Ridgeway officer shortly after the formation of the partnership, and she was very supportive of prohibition of recreational vehicles. Bottom left there is our chairman, Mike Lewington, who represents the Friends on the board of the partnership. And on the right there, we have Mariana Hotta. She's now patron of the partnership, a broadcaster specialising in anthropology, archaeology, social history and adventure, factual television, and very much a champion of getting more people out into the countryside, and particularly from communities that for which it's not part of their tradition, but to get them up and enjoy the Ridgeway. And the Ridgeway is an excellent entry-level place for exploring the countryside. And there is the Ridgeway has a website, if you can easily Google it to find it, and it's responsible for the content of the Ridgeway National Trail web pages, and they will be simplifying it over the course of the next year or so. So the Ridgeway celebrated its 50th proper anniversary, if you like. Obviously, the Ridgeway has been in use for 6,000 years, maybe more, but that sort of thing. But as a national trail, it was recognised 50 years ago in 1973. And there was a celebration on Coombe Hill in Bucks, which is where the Ridgeway was officially opened in the first place. And the Friends contributed to the cost of a leaflet about the Ridgeway launched for this event. Now, our Friends of the Ridgeway Facebook page has been going from strength to strength thanks to Wendy Tobit. She drives this. So that's her in the middle and above the 50. That's Sarah Wright on the left, and Mary Tebjer, who does communications for the partnership, on the right. And Wendy says that during the anniversary year, the Friends Facebook posted each month focused on different aspects of the National Trail, people's experiences under the theme of the Ridgeway Spotters. So there were 12 Ridgeway Spotters, things to do each month, and these attracted hundreds of followers to the pages of our Facebook site and encouraged more people to download our publications and encourage more people to enter the Swire Ridgeway Arts Prize, which I'll be getting to in a moment, and also more people to link with the Ridgeway National Trail website. And so we now have more than 2,000 followers thanks to Wendy's work on that. When I had been doing the Facebook site, when I handed it over to Wendy, I think we had 100 followers. Now that's increased more than 20-fold. As part of the celebration of the Ridgeway's anniversary, 50 years, there was a project called the Ridgeway Photo 50 Project, an exhibition. This was commissioned by the partnership and supported financially by the Arts Council of England to celebrate the 50th anniversary. And the idea was that Matt Riddle, who is in the upper picture in the middle, a professional photographer who would provide 25 photographs which would capture the various essences of the different parts of the Ridgeway, and then there would be 25 photographs produced by children under the tutelage of Sharp Shots Photo Club with input from Matt. So in the top right hand corner, this is where the winners' photos were put on display in Aylesbury. So Lillian Spivey, who runs the Sharp Shots Photo Club, is on the left, Matt in the middle, and Mariana Hotter on the right. And his 25 photos have been mounted and text written for these, and these are being placed, some of them being placed already, and others are being placed at the sites which the photos represent, and there's an explanation of why Matt was moved to photo in those particular places. So, as I've said, Mike Lewington is our chair. Our vice presidents are all the MPs through whose constituencies the Ridgeway passes. All of them agreed to do that. Our positions of patron and president are vacant. So if you feel like applying or know somebody who might, let us know through our website on the contacts page. We've got some new trustees in the last few months. So on the right there, Joe Flatman, an archaeologist who replaces our previous archaeologist, trustee Jim Gunter, and Tony Gibson is a keen walker on the Ridgeway. Now, we're always interested in new trustees. And so if you're interested, again, go to our contact us page on our website and let us know about yourself. We're all volunteers, the trustees, and we're always on the lookout. If you might not want to be a trustee, but if there's some other way in which you can contribute from special skill that you have, you can be co-opted onto our committee. We only meet once a quarter, and it's only £8 to join for individual membership, or £80 for a lifetime. So please join us. The more voices we have, the more powerful we can be. Now, I want to give a shout out here for the Ridgeway and Thames Path volunteers. Whenever you walk along the Ridgeway, most of the time you will find that you're not getting branches in your face. There's no brambles getting at you, nothing in the way at all. And that's because a core group, maybe a dozen or that sort of number, of very hard-working volunteers, both on the Ridgeway and on the Thames Path, are there cutting back the vegetation. So in the wintertime, they cut back the hard vegetation, tree-like stuff, brambles and stuff like that. And in the summertime, as the bottom right picture shows, they're out with the mowers cutting the verges of the Ridgeway, so people aren't swamped by vegetation. All the signs that you see, waymark posts and other signs explaining things on the Ridgeway, have to be put in, and the Ridgeway volunteers are the ones that dig the holes. And believe you me, I've tried doing this, because you're not just digging through soil, you're basically digging through chalk. Even the soil has got lots of chalk in it, so it's very, very hard work. And these guys go out in all weathers, all year round, maintaining the Ridgeway in a way that gives pleasure to us all. Here's a few more pictures. Here's using a long pole saw, lopping off branches which otherwise would be throwing shadow on the Ridgeway, and one time or another possibly falling off onto people. And bottom left there, having a well-earned cup of coffee and a biscuit. So moving on up to the right-hand corner then, one of the ways in which the Friends supports the partnership, as well as in a general way, is that we contribute to one of the 5 themes, namely the creative and spiritual aspect of the Ridgeway, through our Ridgeway Swire Arts Prize. Anthony Birdle succeeded Ian as chair of the Friends, and at around that time there was a generous donation from the Swire Trust, who liked what we were doing. And the committee the Friends Committee decided to use this to establish the Swire Ridgeway Arts Prize, and Anthony took the lead in establishing this, and the first one was in 2017. And he had much assistance from local artist Anna Dillon. And the lead for the Friends of the Ridgeway is Nathan Boyd, at top right there, and until recently in collaboration with Jane Umbush, but she's now got more things to do with the horse riding fraternity. So Nathan's doing that on his own at the moment with help from the other trustees. And we had 133 exhibits last year, which was our highest to date. And Anna still helps us. Anna Dillon, she curates all the exhibitions. So when all the pictures have been delivered and all the stands put up, she decides where everything goes. And we have to say that Anna's word is law. In fact, this picture shows her brandishing a replica a Bronze Age sword, which was made by a skillful person at the 50th anniversary celebration on Coombe Hill. And we all bought tickets for this, and Anna was the lucky winner. So if she needs any backup, she just has to wave that around. I should stress that we, the trustees, have no say in who are the winners or the highly commended of the art. We have an independent panel of judges, and you can see two of them there on the left. And here below then are some shots of people at the exhibition last year and or the year before. It's a wonderful occasion. It's a wonderful occasion. Uffington has got a big car park as well, so there's no problem parking there, and entrance is free. The next one is just a month away, on the 18th and 19th of April, a Saturday and a Sunday. And I want to emphasise here with the arrow at the top, the first one, that all manner of artworks can be submitted: paintings, drawings, sculpture. Sculpture means anything basically that's three-dimensional. Photography, stuff in glass, ceramics, and prose and poetry. And the closing date for submissions is the end of March. That's been extended by a few days from what it was, so by the end of March. So if you are an artist and you get inspired on the Ridgeway and in the downs that surround it, then please enter your work into this wonderful occasion. The other thing that was decided after the success in 2006 of getting much, though not all, of the Ridgeway protected all year round from recreational vehicles was to champion the Great Chalk Way. Essentially, this is linking routes along the chalk ridges from the Norfolk coast down to the Dorset coast. Now, a greater Ridgeway following that route, much of that route had been proposed and described in a Cicerone book by Ray Quinlan, and it had been promoted by the Ramblers. And it comprised, so the first one there in purple on the top right is Pedder's Way, which actually is a national trail. Then the Icknield Way, which unfortunately isn't a national trail, but it's a great trail. The Ridgeway, and then the Wessex Ridgeway. And the Friends were so committed to this notion that in 2009 they actually changed the constitution to include the preservation and promotion not only of the Ridgeway but also of all the trackways along the chalk ridges between Norfolk and Dorset. So the Great Chalk Way Working Group amended the Greater Ridgeway by the addition of 2 consecutive trails. So if you look near the bottom there, there's one in orange and one in sort of yellowish, the Sarson Way and the Cranbourne-Droz Way. These were offered as alternatives to the northern section of the Wessex Ridgeway, as it was considered that they formed a more authentic upland route along the chalk ridges to and through Salisbury with all the things that that has to offer, rather than the northern section of the Wessex Ridgeway. And Anna Dillon designed our waymark discs for those 2 trails. So the working group comprised the Friends of the Ridgeway and the Icknield Way Association, who are as prominent members, but it also includes representatives from Norfolk County Council, Dorset County Council, British Horse Society, Cycling UK, and Walk Wheel Cycle Trust, better known to some of us as Sustrans. So we're trying to represent the interests of all of those people to make use of this wonderful trail, which is about 400 miles long. So it was launched officially in 2024 in the October with guest of honour Mariana Hotter, who, as I said, is the patron of the Ridgeway Partnership. On the left there is Doug Landman of the Icknield Way Association, Mike Lewington in the middle and Marianne on the right. And the Friends contribute to the cost of the information boards, as I should say, Tim Lewis, who is our champion on the Friends for representing our views on the steering group. And he has also used his own money to pay for some of these information boards. Moving on to some of the other members of the team, our webmaster is Ricky Cunningham, and the lead on the trustees for the website is Duncan Strutt. And so I would urge you to go to our website to learn more about us, but bear in mind that we're going to simplify and revive the website during the course of this year. For my sins, I am the editor of our quarterly newsletter, where we report not just on what the Friend's doing, but on all manner of things that are going on along the Ridgeway. And it's a good way of keeping up to date with what's going on. If you want to have a look at some of the back issues, if you go to our website and click on the About Us, then one of the drop-down items is newsletters. We have provided match funding to go with funds from Natural England to provide this water fountain on the Ridgeway. As anybody along the Ridgeway, walked along the Ridgeway will know, particularly in the Wessex section, there's virtually no habitation and very, very few sources of water supply without leaving the Ridgeway itself. Initially, we wanted to replace the water tap on the Ridgeway at Sparsholt Firs, but unfortunately the water pressure wasn't enough to make this gadget work. So it's now being fitted at the Aston Rowan Nature Reserve, alongside which the Ridgeway runs. So I think a lot of people, particularly ones who are doing a lot of distance or are running hard or cycling hard, will appreciate this. And it should be delivering water all year round. It should be frost-proof. And I want to give, towards the end of my talk now, a big shout out for the Historic Ridgeway project. This is pushed largely by Historic England, so they put in most of the money and the drive behind it, but it's also supported financially and in kind from the North Wessex Down National Landscape, ANOB as was, and the Friends of the Ridgeway. Central to this project is not simply improving the look and maintenance of some of the ancient monuments along the Ridgeway, but getting local people to do the job and to really associate themselves with continuing maintenance and love of these ancient monuments. And I like to think of it as it was the ancient Brits who created the Ovington White Horse in the first place. Them and their successors over the centuries, local people who went up there and weeded it, scoured it, is what the phrase used, and then added fresh chalk. If it hadn't been for umpteen generations of people doing this every few years, the horse would have disappeared many, many hundreds of years ago. So there's a history up there of local people looking after these ancient monuments, and that is now central to the Historic Ridgeway project, where most of the work is being done by a very large number of volunteers from all sorts of backgrounds. So some of the earliest were from TFD Health and Fitness, the Grove branch, who worked at the Lord Wantage Monument, as well as this modern monument, 100 odd years or so. There is an Iron Age burial mound underneath that. So 2 for the price of 1 there. Just an example of some of the other volunteers, by no means all. So on the top left, we've got staff from Grundon working on the Mongewell section of Grimsditch, as are the people in the bottom left from Wallingford Green Gym. Then the other 3 photographs are taken at Wayland Smithy, or the hedge that runs along the Ridgeway, with the Wayland Smithy just behind. And so we've got the Farringdon branch of Oxfordshire Young Farmers, Ministry of Defence people from Shrivenham, and environmental health team from South Oxfordshire and Vale District Councils, and others. Some weekends are thrown open to the public as a whole, and masses of people are volunteering to come and do the conservation work up there. I'm a member of Vale of White Horse Ramblers, and we were asked to clear Scutchamer Knob. Now, this is on Cockhomsley Hill, above the East and West Hendred villages in the Vale. And it was so easy to just walk straight past this because it was covered in scrub, which you see in the left-hand photograph. And then over a number of sessions, we cleared this. And we've been back now, I think, 7 times. Because, of course, every time you clear it, nature grows back again. We kill nothing. We're simply doing harsh gardening, if you like. But the fact now people can notice it and they can easily walk on it and around it, which they're perfectly entitled to do without getting stung by a nettle or scratched by brambles. In the bottom left picture there, you can see a patch, one remaining patch of the scrub in the top left quadrant, and this is where the ramblers are clearing it with the aid of brush cutters and various hand tools. But given their due, it was the first Kirkconnelly Scout group who were the first to do work on Scutcheman Knob. Now, I see the Ridgeway as one of the most accessible national trails. First of all, it's near a number of conurbations, some of which are linked there. Very short distances for people to travel in order to get to the Ridgeway, and with car parks everywhere where roads cross the national trail. And Luton, which be off screen to the right, very easy to get to the Ridgeway from there. So I really do feel that the Ridgeway ought to have a very good surface because so many people can access it. And I would like people of even limited mobility to be able to walk along the Ridgeway with a good surface. Much of the Ridgeway is, when you got up to it, is on level terrain, and you can get up to it. People can get up to it by car. So people of limited walkability or cyclability should be able to walk along the Ridgeway without the surface stopping them, and to enjoy all that it has to offer, because it's a different world up there compared to down in the Vale, or the various Vales. So I would like to see us extend the good fortune of the Ridgeway in Oxfordshire to that in West Berkshire and Wiltshire, namely to have it free of recreational vehicles all year round, to give greater tranquility, comfort and safety, so that we can all just imbibe the sheer joy of being on the Ridgeway. So in aid of cyclists, top right, wheelers, bottom left, horse riders, runners, walkers just out for a stroll with a dog, carriage drivers, people just strolling with themselves, and hikers as well. So summing up, we want to complete the prohibition of recreational vehicles, working with the Green Lanes Environmental Action Movement and no doubt other organisations through the country. We continue our work with the Ridgeway Partnership, continue championing the Great Short Way, and through our website, Facebook page and the Swire Ridgeway Arts Prize, encouraging people to come and not only exercise on the Ridgeway, but to breathe in the air that you get up there, the quietness that you get up there, the wildlife that you get up there, and the sheer joy of transforming yourself by being in that environment. And with that, thank you for sticking with me to the end. Thank you.
So thank you very much indeed for that. Sorry about the delay coming in. I couldn't press the right button. But that was amazing to see the time depth to what the friends have been doing and what you managed to achieve over the years. I remember those photographs really brought back how churned up the Ridgeway used to be, and I wonder if it caused a sort of disassociation between local communities and the use of the Ridgeway, that we're trying to get that back again now.
Yes.
No, that was incredible. And if anybody does have a question to ask Dave, do please. Oh, sorry, we already have some. So there's a question from Lucy. Are there any plans to install more water taps along the route?
Sorry, what was that again?
Are there any plans to install more water taps along the route?
We actually had a meeting today, including with the Ridgeway officer. The possibility of more was included. There are actually more than some people might think. And if you go onto the Ridgeway National Trail website, there's a map there that shows where they are. But you're right, we could do with some more.
Thanks, Dave. There's some great comments about what a lovely talk. But while we're waiting for a couple more, may I ask you a couple of questions?
Yep.
Thanks, Dave. How much of the National Trail remains as a boat open to all traffic?
Gosh, in miles. Well, most of what is in Wiltshire is still only protected by a seasonal traffic regulation order. So most of the Ridgeway in Wiltshire, including, near Aylesbury, the World Heritage Site, loads of archaeology there. Most of that is open to recreational vehicles during the summer months. And I've seen some of the damage when walking from the start of the Ridgeway down there. just what it has done. And in Berkshire, most of the Ridgeway in Berkshire is still only protected during the winter months. So I can't put a number on it, but it's a substantial distance.
Thanks, Dave. So another couple. One from Graham. Where did the choice of the acorn as the generally unhealthy? Sorry. Where did the choice of the acorn as the symbol of the route markers come from?
What, on national trails, you mean? The acorn?
Yeah.
That goes back quite a while. Why they chose an acorn, I don't know. But that you'll see that on national trails, all 16 or so of the national trails around the country. But no, I don't know who originated that idea or why an acorn.
Thanks. I'll just read it out loud instead of trying to read it and then translate. Another one from Lucy. Regarding enforceability of prohibition, or I imagine it's quite easy as most people carry camera phones to take pictures. Perhaps if you had a place to send these or a campaign to ask for pictures, it might help with enforcement.
Yes. Now, you're right, absolutely right, that taking photographs is the right thing to do. The police do request that people tell them about any, let's call it a misdemeanor on the Ridgeway. At various points along the Ridgeway now, some are up already, others are going to be put up, notices that are about A4 size, produced by the police, and on it they've got what do you call it, a QR code. But if you can't use that, they ask you to contact them, and they give you the contact details and to explain exactly where you are. And they suggest that the best way of explaining where you are is to use what 3 words. But they do want to know what is happening because they can't take action otherwise. And you can also, on the Friends of the Ridgeway website, there's a contact us, and you can send in what you've seen to us with the pictures that you've taken, and we'll forward them to the Ridgeway partnership because they have a good interaction with Thames Valley Police on the Ridgeway.
So
yeah, please do that.
Yeah, that's really useful to know. Thank you. There's a question here from Keith. What about the Ridgeway in Buckinghamshire and Hertfordshire? Does this need protection to bring up to the same status as the Oxfordshire Ridgeway?
I think once we get over the Goring Gap over the Thames, the nature of the Ridgeway changes, and a lot of that I think is bridleways and footpaths, and they have not suffered the ingress, as it were, of 4x4s and motorbikes as badly as the Wessex section. So their situation is better than on the west. I mean, there are some sections, both in Wiltshire and I think in Bucks, where the Ridgeway actually runs along a road. That's not ideal, but that's the way it is, and it would be very difficult to get the Ridgeway moved off onto other people's land.
So thank you. Just a quick cheeky question from me, really. The Great Chalk Way is something that I should know more about, and I apologise that I don't. But in my other job, I'm only part-time for the Historic Ridgeway. In my other job for Historic England, I cover Dorset. And we've done quite a lot of work on the South Dorset Ridgeway and the monuments on either side there. It'd be really great to have a chat about how we could link up the Historic Ridgeway project with the work we're doing along the Ridgeway down there at some point, if that's okay. So it's more of a statement than a question. Sorry, Dave. But,
Dan, while you're saying that, do you want to, because I heard today that you've got the project has been extended.
Yeah.
The Historic Ridgeway project has been extended. Did you want to say a bit about that?
That would take over your talk, Dave. But I thank you. Yes, we have been extended by 11 months until. I've been extended for 11 months until August 27, and Hayley, our project volunteer coordinator, until I think it's May 28.
Right, and
So
you're going to move the project more towards the Chilterns as well, aren't you?
yeah, up as far as Whiteleaf, up to and including Whiteleaf, as well
Yeah.
as continuing with the work we're doing at the moment. So an extension in time and geographically. But thank you for the opportunity for say that. Um, has the Ridgeway use in recent years increased, particularly after COVID? Um, and has the balance of that usage changed? I mean, have we got more walkers or more cyclists
Oh,
or
I know there are a couple of I forget what you call them, but gadgets that measure count how many people go past. Well, I think one is in Wiltshire. I'm not sure where the other one is. I haven't seen any data to see whether it's gone up or down. I do know that during COVID, because we live very close to it, so we go up there quite a lot. There were masses of people on White Horse Hill, for example, far more than were normally the case. It's my impression that just walking elsewhere, that so many people went out walking during COVID, possibly for the first time, and they're not doing it now, which is a great shame for them. But they had the time then, and perhaps they don't now. So, but I was out at you mentioned it, the dead hedge that many volunteers are making at Whale Smithy, and I was just so impressed by the number of people, members of the public, who walked past us as we were doing the work and stopped. And I was on a walk as well just a few days ago on the Ridgeway on a nice sunny day, and the number of people, this was a weekend, the number of people using the Ridgeway where I was in this section of Oxfordshire was huge. So I think it's a phenomenally good entry level national trail for people to use, partly because it's so close to conurbations, you don't have to travel far to get there, and because a lot of it is just so easy to move along. It's not like the Pennham Way, or it's not like some sections of the Southwest Coast Path, which are awkward to say the least. If we can maintain the surface in the conditions that some of it is now and improve those parts which have been damaged via vehicles in the past, then so many more people will be able to enjoy themselves, irrespective of how good or poor as walkers they are.
so? That's great, and we've had over 200 volunteers on the Dead Hedge
Over
Wains now.
200, yeah.
Just on that project alone, I think we've had
Yeah.
350 together over the 2 years since
Wow.
Nelly started.
That's
Um,
wonderful.
and you, I was going to say, and you were amongst their number, so thank you. Um, we've had another couple of questions. There was a question about the Sarsen Way, which I think Wendy and Mary have kindly answered. We have a question from Ian. Whilst the New England Coast Path is welcome, what are the implications for the funding of other national trails, including the Ridgeway?
Yes, it's a good point. Yes, it was officially opened today or yesterday, was it? Was it? Yes, I think.
Today.
Well, the worry, I suppose, always has to be that with something as long as the England Coast Path, which will require maintenance, just like any national trail does, will the funding in the future be increased pro rata? I mean, I don't know the answer to that, but I'm sure people, you might choose to be pessimistic, or you might just find yourself pessimistic about that. But I don't know. Maybe the government will find the money to maintain that and maintain the level of funding to the current national trails. The funding hasn't been great. When I first joined the Ridgeway Partnership, representing the Ramblers and subsequently partly representing the Friends, I think in Ian's first year as chairman, there was we knew what the budget was, and then it was going to be cut, and then the next year it was going to be cut, and then the next year it was going to be cut. Thankfully, by talking to the right people, some of these cuts didn't materialize, but certainly the budgets haven't been inflation proofed, so the buying power of the budgets has been going down, and the Ridgeway is one of the smaller ridgeways, and the various national trails get money in part according to how long they are. So we're quite short, so that the money that comes in to employ the Ridgeway officer and the volunteer manager of the Ridgeway National Trail and the Thames Trail paths, there's not much left over when you've paid the various salaries. So part of the job of the Ridgeway officer is to chase money from other sources in order to get actual things done on the Ridgeway. Just another shout out for the volunteers. If it weren't for them, the Ridgeway would not be in as good nick as it is at the moment.
Indeed, I certainly couldn't agree more. A question from Lucy. Is there an official badge you can buy for completion of the Ridgeway?
Yes, there is a thing called the Ridgeway Hall of Fame. You can certainly get it. And you should be able, well, I have difficulty finding some of the things on the website, but that's partly why we want the partnership wants to improve it. But there is a page and which you can get to if you go to the Ridgeway National Trail Facebook page, there should be a link there to the Ridgeway Hall of Fame, and you can tell them what you've done, send in a photo, make a few comments about what you felt was great about it or anything negative at all. But most people are amazed by doing that trail. So yes, you can get a certificate and enter the Ridgeway Hall of Fame. You don't have to do the whole length in one go. You can spread it over a year or maybe in 2 years, whatever suits you, just as long as you start at one end and eventually get to the other. Nothing left out in between.
Thank you, Dave. And I forgot to mention, actually, thank you for showing us the archive that the friends had. I hadn't appreciated it was there.
Oh, yes.
Those photographs you sent me when I've been making some grant applications have been invaluable for illustrating the point of.
Oh, the ones for Sainsbury
yeah.
Camp? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there's lots of good material in that. If you think there's something you need, we may have it.
That's really good to know. Thank you, because they were tremendously useful.
Good.
Right. Right. I think that's the end of the questions, Dave. I think it's just left for me to say thank you very much for a really interesting talk, and I can now appreciate the breadth of what the organisation does. I don't think I'd fully appreciated that before. So thank you, and thank you all for your support of the Historic Ridgeway project. It's been amazing. So and you've been very kind.
Thank you very much, Dan.
Thank you, and excuse me, and lots of nice comments about the talk and saying thank you. So, with that, I shall leave it there, then, Dave, and just say thank you very much, and thank you to everybody else for coming. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you.
Bye bye.